had a plan. When Lois turned around, he decides to pepper spray her, tie her up, and put her in the back of his. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we have juicy story. It's crazy. It's about this lady's neighbor. He was obsessed with her. Girls, it was bananas. But today we have some fried chicken, some French fries, some honey, some hot sauce, and some coleslaw. In today's video, today's story comes from ID per usual, and it's about this lady and her neighbor, her next door neighbor sis. He was completely obsessed with her. Like, you literally have to be obsessed with somebody to do this. So let me just get into it. So it starts off with this lady named Lois. Lois lived in a small town in Texas, and she was very content with her life. She had a schedule. She would go grocery shopping monthly. She would hang out with her friends over the weekend. She was content with her life. She was in her 50s, her golden years, and she was just, everything was cool. Then her neighbor decides to ask her out. She politely declined him. She really, like I said, she was more content with her life. She was having fun doing what she was doing. She wasn't really searching for anyone. So she declined it. Some few days later, he asked again.
Bruh.
She was like, no, I think that we're best as neighbors. I think we're just best as friends. Her neighbor, who continuously asked her out, went by the name of Jeffrey. Jeffrey then decides to just move out of town. So Jeffrey moves out of town. He moves like 100 miles away from where he used to live, next door to Lois. And y'all, 6 years go by. So like I said, Lois had a routine. She had a set routine for 6 years. This is when the story switched. Jeffrey decides to come back in town. And when he comes back in town, who's the first person he's seeing? Lois. He shows up to Lois' doorstep. And he decides to ask her out again.
Really, nigga?
I was confused because if I didn't want you 6 years ago, what makes you think I want you now? The feelings they're still the same, okay? So he asked her out again. She declined. But what she didn't see coming is Jeffrey had a plan. When Lois turned around, he decides to pepper spray her, tie her up, and put her in the back of his trunk. He then proceeds to drive 100 miles back to his house, which is away from Lois' house. Jeffrey lives in this more country area. He had a barn, he had a farm.
Ooh! Ah, the ghetto! The ghetto. The ghetto.
That was his standard. That was his kind of living. That was his standard of living. So, like I said, he kidnapped Lois and took her to his home. Days went by. The scary thing is when I realized that he kidnapped her, the scary thing is that who was going to look for her? Because like I said, Lois lived in a close-knit town, but it was like, oh, I'll see my friends every other weekend, and I go grocery shopping once a month. Who's going to know that she's gone? By the time they realize she's gone, days, maybe weeks could have gone by. But, so, like I said, Jeffrey kidnapped her, and he told her, if you scream, won't nobody hear you. Because basically, we're out in the country. You're 100 miles away from your home. It's been 6 years. They're not gonna think to look here. It was crazy. So, Jeffrey did decided to go to her house and burn her house down. He tried to burn her house down because he's trying to tie loose ends. He really don't want anyone to start to look for Lois. But see, that's where he went wrong. That raised suspicion. He went to and burnt her house down. And after he burnt the house down, he comes back to his home, sits her in the living room, and say, look what I did. Now they're really not going to find you. Everyone probably thinks you're dead. And now, imagine being Lois. Like I said, you're 100 miles away from your home. You see your friends excuse me, you see your friends and family periodically. So, of course, they're not just going to think something is wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all see each other every now and then. And this man who was your former neighbor moved out of that town 6 years ago, so they're not thinking it's him. Now your house is burnt down. They probably think you're dead now. Y'all, honestly, I thought it was over. I was like, sis, dang. But my good sis Lois did not give up her faith. So Lois continued to pray. She continued to do all of these things. And Jeffrey thinks he has one up on her. Jeffrey decides to tell Lois, write me a check for $500 because you owe me. First of all, nigga, you kidnapped me. How I owe you? You literally took me from my home and flipped my life upside down. How do I owe you? So, y'all, but honestly, that's where he went wrong. Burning that house down and writing that check. So, he told her, write me a check for $500 and dated 7 weeks back. So, dated like April 7th. She did exactly what he said. So, back in Lois' hometown, where her house was, they had started a missing person report. Because after Jeffrey burnt the house down and they put the fire out, now it's like, well, where's Lois? Her remains aren't here. Her body isn't here. So now the next step is to file a missing persons report. And they did just that. So, like I said, it was a close-knit town. Everyone knew everybody. So the police did an intensive search. They posted her picture everywhere. Everything. So remember that I said Jeffrey made Lois write him a $500 check. She did just that. He went to go cash it. When he cashed that check, the bank immediately notified the sheriffs that was already looking for Lois. So they notified the sheriffs. The sheriff's like, and who cashed the check? Jeffrey. They had Jeffrey name written all over it. So the sheriff was like, okay. He started digging up information about Jeffrey. Let me tell y'all, Jeffrey already had a criminal past. And he was already a suspect in a missing case for his wife. So now they're starting to connect the dots. They're like, okay, this could possibly be him. So they did an intensive search. And they put up missing reports everywhere. And they're talking to different neighbors like, hey, do y'all know who Jeffrey is? And they're like, oh yeah, Jeffrey was Lois's neighbor. And so now they're like, okay. They dug up all the research they can on Jeffrey. They found out where he lived, where he had moved, went to his home. what was so crazy was he had Lois handcuffed and they were eating dinner at the table. Police came and knocked on the door and told Jeffrey and said, hey, have you spoken to Lois anytime since you've moved out of the community? And of course, he's like, no, I haven't been there in a while. And the police was like, oh, really? You haven't been there in a while? Well, the bank just called and said you cashed a check for $500. You just deposited a check for $500 from Lois. He said, yeah, she sent me that a long time ago. Like 7 weeks ago. It was like, well, what did she send it for? And then he couldn't answer the question. He was like, you know, I let her borrow some money years back. And they can tell that he was lying. So they just immediately was like, okay, well, we would like to take you down to the station for questions. When Lois heard that, she jumped up and ran to the door and was like, help, help. And that's when they locked Jeffrey up. This story was so crazy. I honestly, when Jeffrey was like, Jeffrey burnt down the house and stuff, I was like, oh my God, they're never going to find this lady. But from the looks of it, they did. He was so ignorant because when he went to burn down the house, okay, he thought he had got away with it. But I had to remember that if they don't find human remains in the house, then the next step is, where is that person, you know? So, I don't know. That story was so crazy. But I'm glad she made it out alive. Imagine being like, just taken because somebody is obsessed with you. They really like you and you decline them. You know, we, as girls, we decline, we don't realize, but we decline men like pursuing us on a daily. It doesn't dawn on us that they could be possibly plotting on us. Let me know in the comments some ways that you all, or some strategies you all use when you're out grocery shopping, when you're out, I don't know, shopping in the mall, when you're walking on campus to class. What are some ways you keep yourself protected or you stay aware of your surroundings? Because, like I said, somebody can approach you at the gas pump and be like, hey, Shawty, can I have your number? And you tell them no, and they decide to pepper spray you and put you in their trunk. It's like, no, I don't know. It's crazy, but the chicken good though. Okay. So, in the comments, let me know if y'all like this story. Give me some topics to talk about. Let's get into some things for real, y'all. Give me some topics to talk about. Let's eat good. Let's talk about them. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe, sis. And thank y'all so much for showing me so much love on my last video. Thank you so much. All right.